Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portela, and bingo, bango, bongo, Vegas, here we come! We are diving into episode 5 of Margo's Got Money Troubles. But before we take a peek at today's episode, let me tell you how you can support and follow the podcast. Go and follow, like, comment, leave a review anywhere that you can get your podcast. Subscribe. All good stuff. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. You can watch full video breakdowns on YouTube. You can get cultural analysis and additional information about each episode over on Substack. You can also get community over at the Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and on TikTok at Femme and Furious Pod. All right, let us take a chic peek at Flamingos. This is a spoiler warning. We're going to talk about stuff from the book. We're going to talk about stuff from the show. If you haven't read the book and you don't want to be spoiled, sorry, but we are going to talk about it. This episode, Flamingos, was written by Boo Killebrew. Fucking cool name. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Fucking cool name. It was directed by Dearbala Walsh. Vibe check. 2 moms twerking in the back of a pink Hummer limo. Say no more. We are maxed out on vibes. Feral factor, 10 out of 10. I really love this episode. Like a lot. I really love this episode. Who is this episode for? Bachelorettes, flamingo lovers, and anyone who thinks that Jinx is daddy. Hot girl hot take. The way that the show plays with the threads of codependency between Shyanne and Margo is masterful. It is such a good addition to the story, especially because so much of the book is centered around the developing and budding relationship between Jinx and Margo. I am still feeling really nervous about the amount of time that we have left, and more than ever, I am feeling that they adapted this book with multiple seasons in mind. So here's to praying that we get a season 2 confirmation before this season ends, because I am feeling a little stressed. Feeling a little bit stressed about what's going on and how much time we have left. We have 3 episodes left and we haven't even hit like the major plot points. I'm going to kind of roll that idea into our Quickie, which is where we will look at the key themes, key moments, and any sort of feminist footnotes that we've got going on. So let's talk about the fact that with the amount of time that we have left, right? We had 4 episodes left coming into this week. Everything that happens in this episode, for the most part, the big beats, I would say, happen in other ways in the book. But when it comes to the book, the source material, when Shyanne finds out about the OnlyFans, she finds out before the wedding and disinvites Margo to the wedding. So Margo never goes to the wedding. The things like the necklace of the card that she gives Shyanne, the fact that Shyanne does find out about OnlyFans, etc., like all of that stuff does happen. But the fact that they added in this episode and gave us this plot line that doesn't exist in the story, when there are things from the book that we haven't hit yet and we have 3 episodes left, it really just makes me think that they have a longer game in mind, and it's not that this book is getting adapted in 1 season. It's going to get adapted over 2 to 3 seasons. I think if they were trying to get it all done in this season, they would not have pressed the gas on the wedding when the wedding was a huge thing in the book. The fact that Margo doesn't go. Margo's complicated feelings about the fact that she doesn't go. Her relief, her guilt, there's so much of that wrapped up in the book. And we get all of the same feelings during the show, they just unfold in a different way. And I think to add in the wedding and show us this bit of the wedding, again, you have Michelle Pfeiffer, you've got to use her. I get that piece. But the fact that they added this in is making me a little bit hopeful that we'll have at least a season 2. The other thing that was on my mind is like, why Flamingos? Of all the things that they could have titled this episode, what does Flamingos really mean here? And there's a couple things, right? So flamingos are mentioned a couple of times. First, when Margo tells Kenny and Shyanne, like, Jinx is going to be taking Bodhi to go and see all of the live animals in Vegas. And she mentions the flamingos at that point. Then we see Jinx and Bodhi in front of the flamingo exhibit, and he is explaining all the different bird categories. He goes, a group of flamingos is called a flamboyance, a group of crows is called a murder, a group of parrots is called a pandemonium. So he's going on, and then he goes to explain, like, this is how they get their color. It's about a 30-second scene from the episode where he's explaining the colors, but I do think it's interesting that there's something about the way that we see Jinx continually explain things to Bodhi. He's educating him. He's doing this throughout the car ride with the book on tape that he's listening to, and he's doing it here as he's explaining all of the stuff about the birds. And I think that this is such a beautiful highlight of the relationship that Jinx has with people in general. He treats people with respect. He treats people with kindness. He's open-minded, and he approaches this relationship with Bodhi with such earnest attention. He is so invested in this relationship with Bodhi, even before they even really got to know each other. Like, he shows up to Margot's house and he's like, I don't know where I'm sleeping. I don't even know what tomorrow's going to bring. Like, can I hold your baby? He doesn't even care about anything else in that moment. He just feels this connection with people. And obviously with children has been good with children because it's stated that way a couple times throughout the show. So I love that we just have this moment where, like, he's educating, and this comes into play a little bit later as Kenny then, like, makes himself this antithesis of whatever Jinx is. But we see how Jinx is, not just with Margot, but with Bodhi. And we see it with the flamingo exhibit where he's explaining things and educating him and not just showing him around, not just keeping him entertained, but trying to educate him and make his life better and talk to him and respect him as he's getting older, even though it's only a couple of months. So I just thought that was such like a beautiful little detail, but flamingos go, I think, a little bit deeper than that. So flamingos to me always represent balance, right? Because they're always on one foot. So when I think about a flamingo on like my own spiritual journey or life journey or symbolic journey, metaphorical journey, like whatever you want to call it, I usually just say spiritual journey. But by spiritual, I mean like, hello, hi, I'm looking at things from a perspective of like metaphor or deeper meaning. When I think about flamingo, I think about the fact that it represents balance because they're standing on one foot. But there's a few other ways that we could approach it, right? Because as Jinx tells us, they're constantly in community. So when you have a flock of flamingos, they are called a flamboyance. Because you always see flamingos together, not even just real flamingos, by the way, but like lawn flamingos. Like if you never see past somebody's house with like one lawn flamingo. It's always multiple lawn flamingos that are out on people's lawns. So people associate this creature, this animal, to be a community-based animal, which I think is also very interesting, right? If you go with the idea of balance, there is not a balance between Shyanne and Margot. There's not a balance between Shyanne and Jinx. There's not really a balance between Margot and Kenny. So everything is sort of off balance when it comes to these interpersonal dynamics. And when it comes to community, that comes up multiple times, especially later in this episode when Margot will tell Shyanne, like, you raised me to be your friend because you don't have any. So last week we talked about this idea of it takes a village, and Margot is building herself a village. She's got Wang Mangler, Casey, she's got Succulent Rose, she's got Susie, she's got Jinx. Like, she's building this community out for herself to help her get where she wants to go in life and feel supported and feel cared for, both her and Bodhi. Shyanne has nobody, and it's pointed out to us multiple times. Like, Shyanne is the one to point it out to us up until this episode where Margot is the one to say something. So I think that's a huge part of it as well. And like, last little thing about flamingos is they're very colorful. They are called a flamboyance. So it can also be about this idea of authenticity, which is another big theme of this episode, especially when you have a scene like the bachelorette party where Margo is in this pink getup and Cheyenne is in black and white. So these are critical things to think about because the name of the episodes have been important so far and always are when it comes to a TV show, but it's just interesting. This could have been called a lot of different things, and yet it's called Flamingos. And so I think we need to take that into consideration. If you have any other ideas about what you think Flamingos means, please email me, femmeandfuriouspod@gmail.com. All right, let's talk about some key moments. The first one that I have down, and I have things kind of all over the board. Some of them are themes, some of them are moments. The first one that I have down is Kenny telling Margo that he's going to be there for her and be a dependable male figure that she can count on. He doesn't have a second family and other kids. And he's digging at Jinx, obviously, very overtly. If Margo and Shyanne are two characters that are designed to be mirrors, then Kenny and Jinx are designed to be mirrors too. But with Margo, I think she actually feels that she can breathe and be herself with Jinx, while with Kenny, she's constantly having to put on a happy face for the sake of Cheyenne, even when Kenny is intentionally or unintentionally insulting her. Jinx lets people be who they are. By the way, let Cheyenne be who she is. He's actually constantly ribbing her for putting on this charade for Kenny, or as Margo so elegantly put it, church lady drag. Jinx, as an imperfect person, allows for those that he loves to exist imperfectly without withholding any love that he has for them. Kenny, on the other hand, has these spoken and unspoken expectations of Cheyenne that she is consistently molding herself into, or better yet, Margo as our heroine of this show, that Cheyenne is a person that is consistently trying to stuff Margo into the molding because that's what's going to keep her relationship with Kenny afloat. Kenny goes so far in this episode as to order for her, not because he knows her and he knows her taste, but because he insists that it's good and she'll like it. And she just goes along with it. There are times when the use of a partner ordering food or drinks for somebody is this very small symbolic way of showing whether or not they know their partner. So there are times when you'll see a partner order something and that person on the receiving end is blown away because how did you know that this was what I needed right now? And it shows that the other person was paying attention. On the other hand, you have times when the partner orders and it's something the other person hates or doesn't like. And they feel like, how could you not know me or pay attention to the things that I care about? Another show that Nick Offerman was on was The Last of Us, where this quote between Bill and Frank always stays with me. Paying attention to things is how we show love. So that's this, right? He's ordering for her and Cheyenne's just I'm sure it is great. That's maybe not what she wanted to order, especially because at the end of the night she orders freaking buffalo wings. Cheyenne's a little bit trashy and that's okay. But it's the fact that Kenny is controlling even when he appears to be unthreatening, quote unquote. Whereas Jinx has this very threatening physical appearance, this brawniness about him, and yet he is somebody who is so tender and so emotionally rich and possesses a lot of depth and compassion and understanding and is such an incredible person. I don't think that you're ever supposed to watch this show or read this book and not fall in love with Jinx. I know that Margo is there, but to love this story is to fall in love with Jinx and what these two are building together in their relationship as father and daughter. Do I love that Cheyenne defends Jinx to Kenny when this moment is unfolding? Yes. But it's so awful that this is how Kenny acts to Margo when, number one, he barely knows her, and number two, he makes all of these assumptions when Cheyenne didn't even want Kenny to know about Bodhi. And Jinx, on the other hand, has been so consistently engaging with Bodhi, as we saw when he is educating him as he's walking around with his flamboyance of flamingos. He's an active part of Bodhi's life. He's an active part of Margot's life. And not this fantasy life that Shyanne wishes that Margot was still living in. Her life as it is right now. He is there for her now. He is there for her in the present. And so this is the most critical moment of Margot's life. She is now a mother. Her life as it was is gone. That's it. It's over. So for whatever Shyanne has done up until this point, the way that she continues to fumble the ball with Margot and with Bodhi in this moment in Margot's life, when the most important thing to her is being a mother and her son, it's such a stark contrast to Jinx, who was absent all of those years, but he's here when it matters the most to Margot right now. He's not just here, he's not just present, he's actively involved. Bodhi will know Jinx. Bodhi will have a deep relationship with Jinx. Bodhi is comfortable with him, doesn't cry for him. And Margot has this incredible relationship where the woman that she is today can be fully herself in front of Jinx. And that's so, so, so important. So another key moment I would say is when Shyanne kind of learns about the OnlyFans, right? Shyanne feels like she's failed as a mom because she didn't give Margot this life that she thinks that she deserved or feels that she deserved. And when Margot kind of pushes back on that, is like, that's a little bit ridiculous, Mom. Shyanne, with a lot of shame, is like, you had a mom that worked at Hooters. And Margot's like, who cares? You were doing what you needed to do to make it work for you and your kid. There's nothing wrong with needing to do with what you need to do to support your kid. And Margot then immediately tries to come in here and forge a bond with Shyanne by saying, like, I do OnlyFans. I'm just like you. I'm doing what it takes to provide for my kid. Aren't you proud? We're doing the same thing. We've done the same thing. And Shyanne completely freaks out. They're having this conversation, by the way, this conversation about modesty, having your life ruined, the way that people will perceive you, with their bachelorette dick headbands flopping around on their heads. So I think it's, this duality of this moment. And I think it's most interesting that Shyanne flees the scene as she is wont to do. And Margot goes after her and Shyanne says, does your father know about this? And Margot lies. I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, and I wasn't going to go back and watch the other episodes to prove this theory right, but I'm 99.7% sure that this is the first time that Margot has actively lied throughout the duration of the show. Margot is incredibly perceptive, and she has been navigating this tension between her and Shyanne, and between Shyanne and Jinx since episode 1. And Margot knows that if Shyanne knew that Jinx knew that she was doing OnlyFans, it would truly destroy the already fragile tightrope that Margot and Shyanne have been walking on since Margot got pregnant. Margot has been consistent in maintaining her authenticity and her integrity and her values throughout this entire process. So for her to actively lie to Shyanne just tells you how codependent these two people are on each other. And then Margot goes and hits her with a very hard truth and says, you raised me to be your friend because you don't have any. And this is true. Shyanne has been telling us this since episode 1. There was no one else to ask to be my maid of honor. There was no one else to do these things with. If it's not Margot that's going to be cake testing with me, then who else would I ask? Margot is now ready to truly be seen as Cheyenne's equal. They're equal at this point. We are friends, okay? You raised me to be your friend. Here I am, your friend, trying to draw a connection with you, being like, me and you, we're the same. And no matter how either one of these women tries to draw connection and comparison to the forefront with the other character at play, whether it's Margo trying to appeal to Shyanne or Shyanne trying to appeal to Margo in some way. Their differences are so vast, and I think that is what is so painful to Margo. Margo then tries again, right? She tries again at the wedding itself. She gives a speech where she says, Kenny, your love for my mom is pure and deep, and it's a beautiful thing to witness. Has nothing to do about the type of person she thinks he is, has nothing to do with the type of marriage she thinks they'll have, the fact that she's happy that her mom found him. She does not lie. She says what is true about the situation to her without telling a lie, which is that she doesn't think that Cheyenne should be marrying this person. And yet what she says here is still honest and still true. And then she says, Mom, every good thing, every strength that I possess is because of the example that you set. Not only by your words, sometimes, well, especially not your words, but because of you just being you. And for that, I'm truly grateful. She sees this resilience that she carries and her ability to be resourceful, her ability to make things work as something that she has inherited from Cheyenne. And she's reminding her gently here, in no uncertain terms, that she is her mother's daughter. Margo then goes back to the hotel. She's sitting with Jinx. She's telling Jinx the story. Jinx says to her, you didn't ruin her big day. And Margo says, I ruined her so pretty. So Margo is calling back to this fact that Cheyenne has basically said, you ruined my life. You ruined it pretty. You did it in a pretty way, but like you did ruin it. And this has stuck with Margo, obviously, since episode 1, where she said this to her while she was in her early stages of pregnancy. This is at least over a year after that conversation has happened, based off of how old Bodhi looks at this point. This thing that Cheyenne has said to her, like, you ruined my life, has stayed with her. And now she's worried in this microcosm of a way that she's ruined her wedding day by arguing with her, when her wedding day was going to be ruined by Kenny for not getting her nails done, for not having a tie, for making her sing this stupid song that she doesn't want to fucking sing. Like, so many other things are wrong with this wedding. Like, putting aside that all of them are connected to Kenny, this fact that she should not be marrying this man at all, but this like micro macrocosm way that Margo is confronting the negative impact that she feels that she's had on Cheyenne's life. I also love this moment because Margo can tell Jinx so many things. She has no problem being like, I need to pump. She has no problem being like, I need to go take pictures. She has no problem being like, this is what I do for work. And she defends all of these things, but she can be honest with him. She can express herself and have an honest conversation with Jinx, who respects her. Despite the fact that Cheyenne raised Margo to be her friend, this is not a luxury that she can afford with Cheyenne. Cheyenne does not allow Margo to be this honest, this raw, this vulnerable, this authentic with her. Cheyenne wants the version of Margo that complements Cheyenne. We even see it in the beginning of this episode where Cheyenne is trying once again to put makeup on Margo. And Margo's like, stop, right? So she doesn't even want Margo as she is. She's constantly trying to tweak her or doll her up or, you know, make her into something that compliments Cheyenne or makes Cheyenne feel good about herself, even if that person that she's engaging with isn't authentically Margo. Which kind of brings me to the key theme of this episode, and I don't really know what to call it, so I'm just going to call it Cheyenne versus Margo. There are so many different magnitudes of themes that are happening between these two, so let's just start where the episode starts, which is Cheyenne's bridal shower. This is like the inverse of the baby shower. Margo doesn't really think that this wedding should be happening, the same way that Cheyenne didn't really think that Margo should be having this baby. I do think that these two women are very clear mirrors to each other. One of the things that's very clear about Margo's character is that she's very authentic. She's weird, she's unconventional, she's quirky, when she's talking to Mark in the earlier episodes. She says to Mark, "I'm not a romantic person." He says, "What kind of person are you?" And she goes, "A cheesy one," right? She is herself. She commits to the bit that is Margo. And multiple times throughout the show, we've seen her refuse to concede on certain things that Shyanne, in particular, is demanding of Margo, because it would mean that Margo has to go against her own integrity, especially when Bodhi is involved. I think under different circumstances, Margo would be thrilled to see Cheyenne get married. But it's the fact that she's marrying Kenny and the fact that Cheyenne has to consistently lie about who she is to fit into this relationship and therefore into this marriage. She's lying about being church going. She's lying about how much money she spends on her skincare. She lies about drinking. She lies about not liking gambling. And Margo, who is so committed to being herself, this doesn't compute the way that Cheyenne wants to navigate this relationship. Margo has always clearly mothered Cheyenne in some ways, but now she has truly stepped into the role of the matriarch in a way that has profoundly completed her and liberated her. For Margo, Bodhi is her path of liberation, creatively, financially, emotionally, and that wasn't the case for Cheyenne. Cheyenne consistently tells us that having a child ruined her life and will ruin Margo's life because that's how she perceives it. She has naturally been so put off by what Margo is doing because she didn't have the same character development through motherhood. She may have done the best that she could do with Margo, but it's very, very clear to us again and again and again that this was not a path that she felt called to, and it was not a path that was natural to her. On the other hand, Margo is this woman who is in the process of blooming, and she's looking at Cheyenne, and I think she pities her, especially because Cheyenne goes on to tell Margo, "Nobody has ever loved me like Kenny loves me." But it has nothing to do with how much Cheyenne loves Kenny or how much she loves herself around Kenny. She is admitting to Margo in this moment that she likes to be loved and adored for the sake of being loved and adored, because she doesn't feel that she got it from Margo, which we kind of get a little bit of that from the way that Cheyenne talks to Jinx about Margo last episode. She says something along the lines, and I am paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, "It was never natural between me and Margo, but with you, she feels so comfortable, and with you, she feels so safe, and she feels so held." That's where she ends that speech, and she's like, "And for all the times that she would need to be held and rocked and soothed and whatever, you couldn't just tell me to bend my fucking knees." And this is her own self-criticism about her experience through motherhood, but obviously this fact that she doesn't feel that Margo loved her well enough or cared about her well enough. She definitely doesn't feel like she got it from Jinx, where in this episode she calls him out. She's like, "You could have had me and you dropped the ball, buddy." So there's something in Cheyenne that is very attention seeking or in deep need of validation, and Kenny is this first person who has given it to her. And so she doesn't love Kenny, and Kenny doesn't love her either, because Kenny doesn't know the first thing about Cheyenne. The person that Cheyenne is pretending to be is not who Cheyenne is. Cheyenne likes to be loved for the sake of being loved. And for that, especially because she wants to be loved for the sake of being loved and not even be loved for who she authentically is, I think Margo looks at that and she's just like, "That sucks, man. Couldn't be me. That's not what I would want for my life." So I think that they're at odds with the way that they are just navigating authenticity and self-integrity. That discrepancy between their commitment to authenticity goes to show the difference in their lives and how the value and commitment to integrity plays out in their lives. Because for Margo, on paper, it doesn't look good. She's gotten pregnant by her lit teacher, by her professor in college. She had a baby. She's got no one there to raise it, so to speak. She's doing it quote unquote alone, right? We know that she's got Jinx. We know that she's got Susie. She's doing OnlyFans and it looks bad on paper. And yet Margo is enjoying herself. She feels creatively liberated. She's making money. She's able to stay home with Bodhi. She's having fun. She's exploring new motherhood, something that she felt called to. The second that she found out she was pregnant, she said, I don't know much, but I do know I want to have this baby, right? Whereas Shyanne, on paper, is in a committed relationship, is getting married, works at Bloomingdale's, has steady income, goes to church, like all of this stuff that on paper, quote unquote, makes you look or sound like a good person, and yet has to lie about who she is, isn't truly happy, and is putting on a facade of the happy life that she's presenting out into the world, even though none of this is actually authentically her. So the difference is not just a personal difference, but the way that that ripples out into their larger experience of life and how they're navigating this journey. So I really can't wait to see what happens next. All right, that is our episode. Let's crack open the burn book where we will look at the superlatives. The Bold and Bothered Award. This award strictly goes to the Femme and the Furious. It is the quote or the moment that relays the most feminine rage. Has to be Cheyenne's meltdown about Margo doing OnlyFans. Really brutal. Brutal in a way where when Jinx says similar things, Margo speaks through her teeth and she goes, how dare you judge me? And when it comes to Cheyenne saying all this, she's like, I'll quit, I'll quit, I'll quit. Like she can't even defend her position because she's not comfortable enough to put Cheyenne in a place the way that she was with Jinx. How dare you judge me? And by the end of that episode, Jinx is like, how dare I judge you? You're right. You want to know what? You are fucking right. How dare I judge you? Cheyenne will never get to that place and Margo knows that. So she immediately is just like, you're right. I'll concede. I'll do it, whatever you ask. Even though we know that she's going to continue to do OnlyFans and yet, doesn't matter. The Shiro Award. This award goes to the baddie who is the most inspiring or the moment that is the most empowering. And it goes to Margo going to get the tie with Kenny so that Cheyenne can go and get her mani-pedi before her wedding, as any bride is wont to do. The Femme Fatale Award, for the most smash the patriarchy moment of the episode. It goes to Cheyenne talking to Jinx when they're playing pool. She says, you blew it. Could have had me, but you blew it. Speak Your Truth trophy. Best quote or line. The first one is, I have two. It's Cheyenne talking to Jinx and she's like, I know what a fucking manny is. Funny line. Really, really funny. And the second one is Jinx when they're getting the hotel room. He's like, 2 queens, you fucking sicko. That's my daughter. I was hysterical laughing. I just think he's so good in this role. Honorary heartthrob, because I am just a girl, okay? And I want to talk about the most swoon-worthy moments. The first one is Kenny talking to Margo and he says, you're an excellent daughter. I see the way you are with your parents, both of them. I got emotional. I'm getting emotional just now thinking about this line. Kenny is a charmingly unlikable character, and yet this moment is so honest and so special. I think the fact that he hasn't spent all of this time with Margo is so heartwarming that he would say, I see who you are, and I think that you're an excellent daughter because of the way that you navigate these complicated relationships with both of your parents. I think that that's amazing. Second shout out to honorary heartthrob, okay? Because I can't just give it to Kenny. Feels a little lame to give it to Kenny. I'm going to give it to Zaddy Jinx. Zaddy Jinx having a moment with his flexed biceps, holding Bodhi with the big headphones on, and he's wearing the leather pants, salivating. Sex on legs, baby. I love him. That is our episode of Femme and Furious. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, comment, rate, leave a review. I will be back on Tuesday. We are talking about Euphoria, Season 3, Episode 5. I will be back next Friday. We are finishing up The Deal. Okay? We are going chapters 31 through the end of the book. And then I will be back next Sunday talking about Margo's Got Money Troubles, baby. So until then, let's get the fuck out of Vegas.